The moment you know for certain isn't dramatic. There's no gasp, no dropped pin, no scene out of a courtroom movie. Your client leans back in the metal chair in the interview room, comfortable now, because somewhere in the last 20 minutes he decided he can trust you. And he tells you something he shouldn't. A small detail. The kind of thing only the person who was actually there would know. He says it casually, almost offhand, but he's watching your face while he says it. Testing you. Waiting to see if you'll flinch. You don't flinch. Flinching is a thing you trained yourself out of 20 years ago, the same way a surgeon trains himself not to react to blood. You just nod, and you write nothing down. But inside, somewhere behind your eyes, the last door in the building closes. Up until that sentence, you could tell yourself you didn't know. That maybe. That reasonable people could disagree, and disagreement was your whole trade, your whole living. After that sentence, you know, he did it. He did exactly what they say he did, and worse, and he is sitting across the table from you, almost smiling, because he has just watched his own lawyer receive proof of his guilt and stay perfectly, professionally calm. And now your real job begins. Your job was never to find the truth. Your job is to make sure the state can't prove it. You are very good at this. That's the part that turns this into a story instead of just another Tuesday, because a bad defense attorney losing is nothing. That's just friction the system expects and absorbs without a ripple. A bad lawyer loses, everyone shrugs, life goes on. A good one is different. A good one is a problem the founders of this whole system decided, deliberately, they were willing to live with. They looked at the alternative, a state that could convict anyone it accused, with no real fight put up against it, and they judged that an occasional guilty man walking free was the smaller horror. You are the price they agreed to pay. You have spent 20 years becoming the best possible version of that price. You know the judges, their moods, which ones grant motions before lunch and which ones after. You know how juries actually decide, which isn't the way the jury instructions pretend it works. They decide with their gut in the first 48 hours, and they spend the rest of deliberation building a scaffold underneath a verdict they already feel in their bones. You know that trials are not truth-finding machines, whatever the high school civics textbook says. They are contests of persuasion, conducted under a strict set of rules, and the rules do not reward the side with the truth. They reward the side with the better lawyer. And in this case, the better lawyer is you. The truth is sitting at the other table, at the prosecution's table, and everyone in the building pretends this asymmetry doesn't exist, because admitting it out loud would collapse the whole cathedral around everyone's ears. You've known this your entire career. It never bothered you in the abstract, the way nothing ever really bothers anyone in the abstract. And it is not abstract anymore. It is one specific man who did one specific thing to one specific family. And you are about to be extremely good at making sure he walks out the front doors of this courthouse and goes home. You took the oath at 25, and you meant every word of it. The way you mean things at 25, cleanly, without the weight that only comes from actually testing a belief against the world. Everyone deserves a defense. It's in the founding documents. It's in the movies. It is the one thing about your profession that even people who despise lawyers will grudgingly respect. The idea that the accused, however monstrous, gets someone standing in his corner. You believed it then. And here's the thing that makes the next 2 decades survivable, and also the thing that quietly dams you up inside. You still believe it now. It's true. It was always true. The system genuinely does collapse into something closer to tyranny the moment the state can convict a person without a real fight. And the only way to guarantee the innocent are protected is to guarantee the guilty are protected too, because there is no test at the front door of a courtroom that sorts one from the other. That's the entire point of a trial. So someone has to stand up for the ones who actually did it, in order to protect the ones who didn't. That someone is you. Every word of that is true. And you have learned, over 20 years, that a thing can be completely true, and also be the exact place a man hides from what he's doing. The young associate on this case is named Marcus. Marcus is you, 20 years ago, close enough that it aches a little to look at him across the conference table. He's brilliant, and he's idealistic, and he came to criminal defense on purpose, turning down the big firms and their signing bonuses because he genuinely believes this work is holy. That standing between one individual and the crushing weight of the state is the most important thing a lawyer can do with his life. He's right, too. That's the part nobody tells you about idealism when you're the old one in the room, that it's usually correct. The young believe true things. It's the old who've learned how to live around them. Marcus works the case with that same youth in his voice, and late one night in your office, the files spread across the desk between you. He asks you the question, not as an accusation, as a genuine question, from a young man to the mentor he admires, wanting to know how it's actually done. How you carry it, he asks. How do you sleep? And you give him the answer, the real one, the good one, the one you've handed to a dozen young lawyers before him and believed every single time you said it. You tell him, the day the worst man in the world doesn't get a real defense is the day the rest of us stop being safe. You tell him you're not defending the man, you're defending the line. And the line protects everyone, including him, including the people he loves, including strangers who will never once know your name. He nods slowly. You can see it land. You can see it give him exactly what it gave you at his age, permission, a place to stand. And you have just handed a young man the exact tool you use to sleep at night. And you will spend the rest of this case quietly watching what it protects him from, and what it does not. Here is how you win. And the horror of it is that none of it is a lie. You cannot, by the rules of your own profession, put on a defense you personally know to be false. You can't put him on the stand to testify to a story you know is fiction. You can't tell the jury he was somewhere he wasn't. Contrary to what most people assume about defense attorneys, you are bound by more honesty, in the narrow technical sense, than almost anyone else in that courtroom. But you don't need to lie. Lying is for amateurs and desperate men. What you do is cleaner, and it is far more devastating. You attack the state's proof. Proof is a fragile, human, error-prone thing, and you know precisely where it breaks. The confession he gave in the first hours after his arrest, the one that would have buried him, was taken after he'd asked for a lawyer, or arguably asked, ambiguously asked, 3 words mumbled while he was exhausted and scared under fluorescent light at 2 in the morning. You file the motion, and you argue the ambiguity for 3 hours, sentence by sentence. And the judge, bound by law that exists to protect innocent people from coerced confessions, suppresses it. Gone. The jury will never hear the words your client actually said. That's not a trick. That is the Constitution working exactly as it was designed to work. And it just erased the truest piece of evidence in the entire case. That motion is the finest work you do, and almost no one outside the profession ever sees it clearly. The rule that a suspect who invokes his right to counsel cannot be further questioned exists for one reason: to stop police from grinding false confessions out of frightened, innocent people locked in small rooms. It is a good rule, a necessary rule, written in the blood of men who confessed to things they never did. And your client is guilty, and he confessed truthfully, and you used a rule built to protect the innocent to erase a guilty man's true words. And the judge who granted your motion did the correct thing under the law, and everyone in that room behaved exactly as they were supposed to, and the truth still died quietly on the table. That is the precise shape of your entire career. You take protections built for the innocent, and you fit them, precisely and perfectly, onto the guilty, because the law cannot tell the difference between the two, and it is not allowed to try. Your genius is that you never once have to break a rule in order to break a case. Then there's the witness, a woman who saw him, who can place him there, and she is telling the truth, and you know she is telling the truth, and it is now your job to make 12 strangers doubt her. You don't do it by calling her a liar. That's crude, and juries hate crude. It turns them protective of her. Instead, you find the seams in ordinary human memory, the same seams that exist in every honest person's recollection of anything. The fact that she first described the man as taller than your client actually is, that the parking lot lighting was poor, that she'd had 1 glass of wine with dinner, that 6 weeks passed before she picked his photo out of an array. That memory is reconstructive and suggestible, and everything the cognitive science says about eyewitness identification is simply, plainly true. All of it fair. All of it something a careful advocate is entitled to raise in open court. You watch her on the stand, an honest woman telling exactly what she really saw, and you take her certainty apart, thread by thread, gently, respectfully, lethally, until the truth arrives wrapped in enough manufactured fog that a reasonable person could, just barely, hesitate. You are never hostile to her. Hostility is a gift you'd be handing an honest witness, because it lets the jury feel protective of her. Instead you are kind, almost tender. You thank her for coming in today. You acknowledge how upsetting that night must have been for her, and upsetting is a word you chose on purpose, because upset people misperceive things, and you've just told the jury that without ever having to say it out loud. You ask her, gently, to be honest about the wine, and she is, because she's an honest person. And her honesty about one glass of wine becomes, quietly, in the jury's mind, an asterisk hovering over everything else she's said. You ask if it's possible, just possible, that in poor light, from that distance, after that kind of shock, 6 weeks before she ever saw the photo array, she might be mistaken. And she says no. But she hesitates first. 1 quarter-second of doing the fair thing, of actually, honestly considering it. And that quarter-second is what you were fishing for the entire time. That's the whole catch. Because a witness who visibly considers whether she might be wrong looks, to 12 strangers in a jury box, exactly like a witness who might actually be wrong. You never call her a liar. You just make her human. And human, in a courtroom, reads the same as unreliable. And unreliable reads the same as doubt. And doubt is the entire game. She leaves the stand shaken, quietly doubting herself, a good person made to feel like a fool for the crime of having seen something true. The last thing she does before she steps down is glance at the victim's family. An apology written across her face, as if she failed them, when the only thing she actually did was tell the truth to a man whose entire job, that day, was to make the truth wobble. Marcus watches you do it. You can feel him watching. Reasonable doubt isn't a feeling. It's a machine, and you operate it better than almost anyone in the state. Most people think reasonable doubt means the jury has to believe he's innocent. It means something much messier than that. It means the state has to close every gap, and your entire craft, your whole life's work, is the manufacture and preservation of gaps. A gap here, the suppressed confession. A gap there, the shaken witness. A gap in the timeline. A gap in the chain of custody on the physical evidence, because a lab technician logged something 11 hours late on a Tuesday. A gap you can point to, one by one, in your closing argument. Not to prove he didn't do it. You're far too skilled a lawyer to ever argue that directly. But to build a wall of gaps so tall that a juror who privately, quietly suspects he's guilty can still, in perfectly good conscience, following the judge's instructions to the letter, vote to acquit. That's the actual masterpiece. Not convincing 12 people he's innocent. Handing them a legally righteous path to letting a man they believe is guilty walk out the door. You are not corrupting the system. You are running it at the highest level it is capable of being run, and that is so much worse than corruption, because corruption can be found and fixed. This is the machine working as intended. Marcus stops asking how you sleep somewhere in the second week of trial. You notice it right away. He used to ask lightly, at the end of hard days, almost like a ritual between the two of you. And then he stops. And you understand exactly why, because he's watched the real thing now. Not the noble speech, the actual daily work the speech gets wrapped around like gift paper. He's seen that defending the line and dismantling an honest woman on the stand are the same physical act, performed by the same hands, on the same Tuesday afternoon. The speech didn't prepare him for that. The speech is true, and it still didn't prepare him, because the speech operates way up at the altitude of principle. And the actual work happens down in the mud, where one specific, frightened woman starts doubting her own eyes because of the things you very carefully said. He's quieter now. He still does his tasks well, brilliantly even, because he is brilliant, and something behind his face is recalibrating in real time. And you recognize that recalibration because you did it yourself once. A long time ago, in this same office, maybe this same chair. You want to tell him to stop, to stay exactly the way he is right now. You don't. You need him sharp for the closing argument, and, if you're honest with yourself, you gave up the right to protect anyone's innocence a long time ago, starting with your own. The verdict comes back not guilty, and you watch your client's shoulders drop with relief. And in the same breath you watch the gallery, watch the mother of the person he killed make a sound you will hear for the rest of your natural life. You have won, completely, cleanly. You did not lie once. Every motion was sound. Every objection was proper. Every cross-examination stayed inside the rules. Every argument was a fair comment on the evidence in the record. The whole thing was a flawless performance of exactly the role the Constitution wrote for you. And the man who did it is standing up now, buttoning his jacket, walking toward the double doors, the parking lot. The rest of his life, you didn't lie once. That's the part you will never forgive yourself for, if you're still the kind of man who does that, the not forgiving. Every motion legal. Every argument true. Every word of it clean, and a killer went home anyway. And the cleanness is the wound. If you cheated, you could hate the cheating. You could point at it. You didn't cheat. You did the job perfectly, and the perfect job produced this. Which means the horror was never in you failing the system. The horror is in the system, and you, succeeding at it together. He shakes your hand outside the courtroom, your client. He thanks you warm, genuinely grateful, and then he leans in and says one more thing, quiet, just for you. Some small remark that only a man entirely without remorse could ever make out loud. He confirms, one final time, that he is exactly what you always knew he was. And then he smiles, and he's gone, out into a world that now contains him freely, because of the sheer excellence of your work. You turn around, and Marcus is standing there. And Marcus heard it too. You look at the young man's face expecting to see it crack, expecting horror, expecting the exact thing you feared this whole trial. That's not what you see. What you see is worse. You see him already reaching for the answer. You see him find it, the one you gave him, in your office, late at night, over the file. The day the worst man in the world doesn't get a real defense is the day the rest of us stop being safe. You watch it rise up behind his eyes and steady him. Catch him before he falls, exactly the way it was built to catch a man. Exactly the way it caught you at his age, in this exact hallway. Maybe with this exact echo bouncing off the marble. And you realize, standing there, that you didn't just win a case today. You made another one of you. The speech worked. It's still working, right now, in real time, in front of you. It will work on him for the next 20 years, and one night he'll hand it to some brilliant, idealistic kid in an office, late, with a file spread out on the desk between them. And that kid will sleep too. For a while, the client kills again. 14 months later. You find out from the local news, a small item near the bottom of the segment, a name you know instantly, and there is no legal sense in which any of it is your fault. You defended a man exactly as the law requires you to, the jury acquitted him, and the responsibility for what happened after belongs to them, and to him, and no court on earth would ever assign a molecule of it to you. All of that is true, and you sit in your kitchen with the news still playing, low volume, and you reach for the answer, the good, true answer that has held you upright for 22 years, and for the first time in your life, it doesn't come. You wait for it. You say the words to yourself, quietly, at your own kitchen table. The worst man, the line, the safety of all of us, and they're still true. They're exactly as true as they've ever been, and they don't hold anymore, because a specific family is now planning a second funeral that would not be happening if you had been even slightly less good at your job. And no principle, however sound, however genuinely, permanently true, is heavy enough to sit on that side of the scale against a second person in the ground. The answer was never false. It just stopped being big enough. Somewhere across the city, Marcus is still young enough that his still works. And you think, for a moment, about calling him, warning him, telling him the one thing nobody ever told you, that the answer is true, and the answer is a hiding place, and both of those things have never once stopped being the case at the same time. You don't call him. What would you even say? He'd ask how you sleep, and you'd have to tell him the truth, which is that you used to know, that you had a beautiful, honest answer to that exact question for 22 straight years, and that it worked right up until the one night it didn't, and that he is driving toward that same night, right now, at the same speed you were driving, holding the exact same map you handed him yourself. And there's no way to give a man a different map, because the map is true. The map was always true.